Good morning, everyone. This is Lara de Klerk here. I know this week we've been focusing on unanswered prayers, but this morning I specifically want to focus on the heart behind prayer. I find prayer one of the most beautiful ways to connect with the Lord, but I feel like the heart that we go into that time of prayer with is so important in order to be able to fully and ultimately connect with the Father. This morning's reading is going to be taken from Micah 3 verses 2 to 4. I love the Old Testament. I feel like the books in the Old Testament really don't get enough recognition. And I love seeing God's heart throughout the Old Testament. God's people are constantly rebelling against the Lord. They're constantly disconnecting themselves from the Lord. And their hearts are always just filled with so much evil and so much sin. But yet the Lord never forsakes them. He constantly seeks to reconnect with his people. And the book of Micah is no different. Don't you know anything of justice? Haters of good, lovers of evil. Isn't justice your job description? But you skin my people alive. You rip the meat off their bones. You break up the bones, chop the meat, and throw it in a pot for stew. The time's coming, though, when the same leaders will cry out for help to God, but he won't listen. Micah was a prophet, and he was sent to the people to reconnect them with the heart of the Father. The leaders in Israel were corrupt. Sounds very similar to the leaders that we have in power at the moment. These leaders were greedy, they were wealthy, they were stealing money and land from the poor. They weren't looking after the oppressed, so they weren't looking after the people that God needed them to look after most. What's even worse is that the prophets were selling false promises of God's protection to people who were able to pay for those promises in return. So it was a really corrupt nation, and their hearts were disconnected from the Father. They were doing things that were completely out of line with the Father's will. When it comes to prayer, God is concerned about the heart that we come to him with. We may not be thieves. We may not be selling false promises to God's people, but we all carry something that separates us from him. God may not send prophets into the world like he did in the Old Testament anymore, but he constantly calls us to have heart checks, to search ourselves so that we can ultimately come back to him, to be able to connect with him fully. When I was 16, I had a really bad eating disorder. I hated my body. I just hated everything, about myself, and this caused a complete disconnect in my relationship with the Lord. I couldn't believe that he, could love me fully. I couldn't fully believe the promises that he had proclaimed over my life. And I struggled to have a relationship with him. I really struggled because there was this disconnect in my heart, this view about myself that was completely disconnecting me from the Father. And thank goodness the Lord took me on a really long journey with him through that eating disorder. But a year ago, I was looking at pictures of this time of my life, and I still remember saying to my mom, look how skinny I was, look how amazing I looked. And it completely sucked me back into that world of just hating myself. And once again, I created this disconnect in my heart. I, questioned so many things. I had questioned, the journey that the Lord had brought me through. I questioned his love for me, his full and ultimate love for me. I questioned the way that he had created me, the way that he had created and formed my body. And in that week, I had this terrible smell in my car, this absolute fish smell in my car. I couldn't get rid of it. I cleaned it, I washed my car, I did everything. And it was like the stink. And it was almost like the Lord was trying to say to me that I needed a heart check, because the things that were in my heart were causing this complete disconnect from the Father, and that stunk to him. It stunk because it was completely making my heart turn from having this ultimate relationship with him. Sometimes we need to confront the stuff in our hearts that is pushing us away from the Father and from our full and ultimate connection with him. The book of Micah is full of condemnation, and it's full of asking the people to turn back to the Lord, but it's also filled with hope. The Lord is always filled with hope. Micah 2 verses 12 to 13, I'm just paraphrasing, but it basically says that the Lord wants to call us back to him. I want to get them together in one place like sheep in a fold. I want to shepherd the remnant of my people. What is that is in your heart at the moment that is causing the separation to the Lord? What is it that is in your heart that is causing you to disconnect from him? Search your heart and come back to that place where we can fully and ultimately connect with the Father in prayer.